This is a reading summary of Ian J. Maddock's 10 Dead Guys You Should Know. Today, we will be looking into the chapter that surrounds Athanasius. So the chapter is entitled Athanasius Against the World and will expound on the, the notion of Athanasius contra mundum. Athanasius was known to be resisted by the crowd most times, and we'll see that in the chapter, he also outlines how Athanasius, despite of opposition against his position, his Christological perspective, he was also sort of persecuted for that. Particularly, what's notable about Athanasius is that he experienced five exiles by five separate kings or emperors before. Hence, his chapter begins with an overview, and this relates to events surrounding AD 335, which was a little late into his years already. So he was already a bishop. He was already quite an older individual, more experienced already. And it surrounds the council at Tyre, where although he began to debate about theological matters during this council, he was actually indicted for the murder of a man, Arsenius, and whose arm he had been alleged to have cut off. So here this does go a bit quite into the detail of Athanasius and the drama that was created uh, with in relation to the murder of Arsenius. Yeah. But here what the editor wanted, or the author wanted to show, was how political church conflicts were during those times, and how um, when it comes to a theological debate, it was never always in relation to simply the theological matter, but also the character of the person and or other political interests in relation to the Roman Empire. Okay, and then starting from this header, which reads formative years, the author actually would go more into the yeah, he'll go more into sort of the a chronology of the life of Athanasius. Right. So it says here, sometime in the closing of the third century, so that's early 300, he was born, or rather 290s to 300. And there was no certain the year of his birth, but he came to be installed as a bishop in 328. Uh, yeah, so he was under the charge of someone called Alexander as the Bishop of Alexandria. This role, which Athanasius would later on succeed. So he was born in the context post the great persecution under emperor under the emperor, or not sure if it's mentioned here, is it Diocletian? Yeah. So here Diocletian. So he lived through those times up until the time of Constantine. So conversion of Constantine was 313. So his installment ordination as bishop was 328. So there was some pre-context to his life. Okay, so here is the beginning of the controversies. So it started off in Alexandria, when a presbyter called Arius, of which we are very familiar, challenged Alexander's understanding the relationship between Jesus and God. What's clear is that Arius accused Alexander of holding a heresy that blended the Father and Son so closely as to lose their distinctness. Arius's main theological work was Thalia, and that work consists of something that was similar to a song. So maybe a propaganda kind of a song. So that was Arius. All of Arius's views were represented by Athanasius, as much of it did not survive to us today. Yeah. Okay, so Athanasius produced some of the passages of Thalia which represented Arius's views. One of which, one of the passages read, "Unbegun made the Son, for he is not equal, no, not one in essence with him, the Father. Foreign from the Son in essence is the Father, for he is without beginning, though the Son was not. The Father was God." So he distinguished the divinity of Jesus from God the Father in a very uh, sharp manner. This passage is consistent with how Athanasius presents Arius's position elsewhere in his writings. Arius separated God, the Son from the Father, argued that though Jesus was not eternal and existed at some point in time. God was not always a father, the Son was not always. And since all things are creatures, he also is a creature and a thing made. There's a time when the Word of God himself was not. Okay, so God the Son is not uh like God the Father, but the Son is also not eternal in this sense. So were some of the allegations or propositions made by Arius, and also that he is of a different essence, um, which made God to be God was not present in Jesus. The essence expressed in the word ousia lie at the heart of the debate. It was clearly an issue of tremendous importance for the church. How could Jesus be worshipped as God if he did not share in the very essence of God, or was in fact a part of the creation? How could Jesus save unless he was not only human but also divine? So the divinity of Jesus was in question and coming under attack here through the words of Athanasius, Arius. Here, once again, the author makes a case for the omniscience of Jesus. Jesus's omniscience was attacked uh, because there was a differentiation between God the Father and God the Son now. If there's this differentiation, then there are parts of the Father that the Son does not know, would be the logic that I'm seeing here. So as far as Athanasius was concerned, Arius's teaching threatened everything the Bible had to say about salvation. So he wrote, "Change the corruptible to incorruptible, incorruption, was proper to none other than the Savior himself. In the beginning made all things out of nothing, that only the image of the Father could recreate the likeness of the image in man. That none save our Lord Jesus Christ who could give to mortals immortality. That only the Word who is alone the Father's true and sole begotten Son could teach men about him." So this is Athanasius reinforcing or restating his emphasis on the importance of Jesus Christ. Hence his insistence in arguing for his immortality, eternality, which would later be captured in the Nicene Creed. Athanasius goes on to argue, having proved God hid by his works, Jesus was then in a position he could offer the sacrifice on behalf of all. Arius' views began to win significant support all over the Mediterranean, prompting Alexander to call a meeting of church leaders from across North Africa who agreed to condemn Arius' teachings as heretical and excommunicate him. Arius had managed to win over some influential supporters, none more so than Eusebius, the bishop of Nicomedia, modern day Izmit, Turkey. Just to make a quick highlight on this name here, sorry, my pen is okay. Not so much, but the name itself. So this is differentiated from the other famous church father Eusebius. He is contemporary of Arius and Alexander. So he's another person. What would stand out in this book is that maybe something I did not know before was that the controversies of Arius outlived the man himself in the person of Eusebius and in pro-Arian emperors that ascended to the throne of Rome. Yeah. So here's making a point because Eusebius would reappear again later as part of the story and um, continues to perpetuate the controversies in relation to the Nicene view of Christ post the death of Arius even. Okay. The time Constantine had established himself as the sole ruler of the Roman Empire, it was an empire shattered by theological disharmony. Hence, the Council of Nicaea or Nicaea was being called at the time. They met in May 325, the emperor himself attending at key points. Around 300 bishops and numerous support staff. Many church leaders brought written complaints about each other, hoping to be heard by the emperor, who burned the all the pleadings handed to him before the start of the council. The message that was sent is clear. We're not here to debate minor matters, and also the fact that there was a lot of disharmony in the court of Constantine as well. So as the council went ahead, there was a resounding victory against Arius and his supporters. The stance that mainly surrounded the council was in relation to the word ousia, and whether it is right to speak of Jesus as homoousias or as homoousias, same essence or similar essence, was clearly a matter of theological importance. As was previously stated, the reasons emphasized by Athanasius for the insistence upon a correct understanding of who Jesus was in relation to the Father. Hence, a creedal statement was issued Nicaea that Jesus was of the substance of the Father and consubstantial homoousios with the Father. So in the process of time, it had been Alexander against Arius in the councils. But Alexander came to die in 328, which concluded a time and season. However, at the point of his death, the debate continued to rage, and Arius and his supporters continued to make a strong headway. So the matter of theological controversy persisted, uh, and um, and this was when Athanasius actually came into the scene. So he was he was the successor of Alexander as a bishop of Alexandria, and Athanasius's ministry was to be one of long controversy, beginning with his election as bishop. So one of the matters was that he was found, or rather charged with being under the age of 30 when he was elected. He was too young. But that didn't persisted, as it says here his election still stood. So um however, after that, the one of the immediate demands of him was that Eusebius came back. So recall this name that emerged earlier on. He was a friend of Arius, supported his views, and this other church leader wanted Arius to be restored to fellowship. And so all the way from this part of onwards, the whole controversy only ends at the death of Arius. However, this became a matter of conflict between his camp, Athanasius, and the camp of Arius and his supporters. So that included Eusebius, um, and the other like pro-Arian, um, people, parties and people. Yeah. So Eusebius vigorously lobbied the emperor, arguing uh, that it was harmfully divisive to exclude two areas from the church. He then added a few serious allegations against Athanasius. The allegations they related theological differences that existed. Athanasius was a strong defender of the outcome of the Council of Nicaea, so no traction could be gained on that front. However, he was accused of some other economic matters, imposing a tax on linen products, inciting violence against the Meletians by encouraging his presbyter Macarius to smash a cup used in celebration of the Lord's Supper, and being an enemy of the emperor, effectively guilty of treason. These were charges that when Athanasius met with Constantine in person, he was able to refute to the emperor's satisfaction. It was then that the allegation against the matter of Arsenius began to surface. And this came to the year 335. Despite the dramatic exposure by Athanasius of the attempt to frame him for murder, things went badly for uh, the Alexandrian bishop. The accusation regarding Arsenius' murder was only one of many charges leveled against him. So the enemies came against him strongly, and he realized that um, the enemies having attacked him on other fronts or from other angles, that he was likely to face censure. There was the censure against him at the council, which did eventually condemn him, deposed him as Alexandria's bishop, and exiled him from the city. So he tried to intercept the emperor uh, and his entourage uh, by sailing in an open boat. And this was met uh, with some resistance and annoyance, of course. So he did in fact meet with Constantine along the way. So the thing he tried to change during that meeting with Constantine was to request for the 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 accusers from the Council of Tyre to be summoned to Constantinople uh, for for unknown reasons here. However, that didn't totally pan out for him, yeah, as it said here. So, here it describes his failure. So essentially, he was being accused of relation, a matter related to corn. So hindering the trade of corn, between Alexandria and Constantinople, and that earned him an exile. This is importantly to note once again there were a total of 5 exiles. So this was Athanasius's first exile, and he started 335, leveled against him, or rather sentenced to him by Constantine. Yeah. So this is what happened. So here it actually alleges that Constantine knew the politics that was going on within the court and was actually trying to save him, but it was still nonetheless a huge blow to Athanasius. Okay, so following his exile, Arius was readmitted into fellowship with the church. Okay, but yeah, as you read on, right, actually you would discover that this doesn't happen in favor of Arius. Yeah. So Arius had agreed to sign off on the statement of Nicaea. That means assenting to the creedal statement of the Nicene Creed, yes, to the disbelief of the emperor, but he was willing to do that, but he didn't live long enough. So um, so what happened was this other person called Bishop Alexander of Constantinople. So previously we noted another bishop, which was um Alexander as well. And this other Alexander was Alexander of Alexandria. But now another Alexander resisted Arius, prayed, went into the church of Saint Irene, prayed that God would remove either Arius or himself, and Arius died in a toilet, quite ironically. Yeah. And so it was noted that Athanasius wrote in a very clinical way that Arius was deprived both of communion and of his life together in a semi-ironic way. Yeah. But we know that Arius's death changed nothing because Eusebius um, had perpetuated the resistance against Athanasius, although he didn't even strictly held to Arius's theology. Yeah. So over the coming years, there'll be a number of different propositions advanced to the relationship between Jesus and God. What all would hold in common was a rejection of uh, the Nicene Creed. They refused to acknowledge Jesus as the one with God in every way, sharing in the ousia of God the Father. The title Arianism was simply uh, a useful way to refer to this diverse group of adherents to the unorthodox understanding of the Son, which in some form or other undermined his divinity. That was what it is. They were, in fact, some of them call them Eusebians as well. Okay. So this continued, and Athanasius was still in exile. Yeah. And then Constantine died in 337. Uh, and then the kingdom was split into three. And I recall the book itself, I drew out the three emperors, pardon the lines, and here was Constantine the second, succeeded by Constantius. Sorry, this was Constantine first. Um, then Constance and Constantine second, who died an early death. So he was out of the picture. And then East and West were divided among the two, West and East. And to recall that Athanasius's favor stood with the folks on this side of the kingdom. Okay, so yeah, he was enemy, or rather he was mainly opposed by Constantius, the East. Mm, so with this new regime, Athanasius could return from exile, 337. So he arrived in Alexandria to create a claim, having called on the Eastern Emperor Constantius on his way. And Constantius, although being opposed to him, would later be sympathetic to would rather would show like some goodwill towards this Athanasius as well. Yeah. But yeah, it was a bit of a complicated relationship between um Athanasius and Constantius throughout. Okay, so as we can see here, so the support is also being mirrored by the folks under these emperors. So the western side of the empire actually favored Athanasius, whereas the eastern part favored anti-Nicene. That could include the Eusebians as well. Okay, here so there's a mention of Athanasius's second exile. Um, okay, but I can't recall whether there was a background later on. Yeah, but there was an exile from about 338 to 339 onwards, which represented the second exile of Athanasius. Let me just confirm that. Oh, sorry, it's 339. Yeah, so 339 he was exiled again. The context of second exile was that he was being replaced by Gregory of Cappadocia, who came against him with a military force. Thereafter, a 334 meeting took place between Athanasius and Constantius. The meeting actually went well. Athanasius reported that it was received kindly, and later that year, 346, he was allowed to return to his post as the Bishop of Alexandria, and then a peaceful decade. But when Constance, Emperor of the West, deceased, it was another time of trial for him. So 335, the imperial forces surrounded the church where Athanasius was uh, ministering and arrested him. Tried to arrest him. He was smuggled out and went into hiding. And at that hiding period came to be known as his third exile. So he wasn't sentenced the third time. He made a run for on the road. Yeah. So this decade of ministry to many people um had earned him a lot of favors. So he was actually well hidden by the people. Um that yeah, they actually protected him. Oh, so come, let's indicate that also. So at the death of Constance, uh the 350, okay, pardon the handwriting, 350. Then he went into his third exile again under the intense imperial pressure. So notably, some of the emperors that followed suit were actually pro-Arian, and what that does for them was that uh those who were Nicene began to cave in, those who affirmed the Nicene Creed, and at that point they went on to sign a creed that not only failed to affirm homoousios, but asserted that they were simply alike, in very ambiguous terms. And it was during that time that Jerome wrote depressingly that faith was being condemned itself. Okay, so this persisted, and recall that we're still in the period of the third exile of Athanasius. Thereafter, the death of Constantius, about roughly 1 decade later. So Constantius died in 360, the year 360. Yeah. And then a new emperor called Julian the Apostate actually assumed the throne. So he was a non-Christian pagan emperor who wanted to revive paganism in the Roman Empire. So wanting to stir the division in the church, he actually allowed Athanasius to return from exile in 362. Exile number 3 ended 362. And this didn't work out as he hoped. Hence, he threw into exile again later in that same year, 362. But he died quickly, 363. And another emperor, Christian emperor, was brought to the throne again, Jovian. And Athanasius returned to Alexandria. However, after the death of Jovian in 364, another powerful, rather another emperor came up to the throne, Valentinian, and his anti-Nicene brother Valens. And it was Valens who exiled him the fifth time, 365. Troops again besieged the church and captured him. He escaped. Fifth and final time. But the emperor was forced to restore him uh, as bishop again in 366 because of Athanasius's influence. And Valens feared him for political reasons. He was forced to restore Athanasius to power. So, um, so this represented another turning point. Post 376, the theological tide had turned. Those who uh, opposed the Nicene Creed were being marginalized, and those who were previously opponents of the Nicene Creed began to turn around uh, because they were seeing how this radical belief of against the homoousios was really damaging. Yeah, so you can see here division of the camps of the non-homoousios folks were divided into uh, they were so divisive, right? So they said they were either homoiousion, homoian like, but uh no mention of essence like the word ousios. And then anomian. This says it's unlike. So interestingly, two new, two separate new positions began to develop. So, so this would perpetuate, like, so Athanasius's life has been outlined in the above. So he will continue to remain at Alexandria until his death in 373, having underwent a total of five exiles, highly tumultuous life of his. Okay, so yeah, and so Nicene Creed began to be more strongly reinforced by people having seen um the the I guess the fruit of it, the unity that the church required at that point in time also. So they come together to agree more and more as a whole. Athanasius continues to write extensively on Christology, highly respected by East and West. He provided the foundation for future church councils, including and being succeeded by a new generation of theologians, notably Basil of Caesarea, who would affirm vehemently the Nicene Creed, formalizing it in a way that would pave the way for Chalcedon in 481. Okay, so Athanasius' legacy, so we'll go through very quickly because just mentioned he's a divisive figure. He stood firmly for his beliefs. Uh, although he has received a bad name recently for being a mafia, exercised power and a violent man and all that. Uh, Yet he, despite his seeming like dogmatism, he actually provided an insistence for doctrinal matters in a way that really reflected something that we can learn from. Here, the author is just saying that like, is it really that important to be so dogmatic? And he feels that Athanasius, in a sense, provides us with a paradigm that uh, yes, you know, these are matters of like to be insisted upon the person of Jesus. What do we make of him? Uh, how do we um how do we view him or does affect like also theology, it does affect a lot of the ways that we build our life around Jesus and how we believe him. Yeah, this also gave rise to the term mean Athanasius Contramundum. Yeah. Which came to be closely associated with his name. He was one man against the world during his time. He was something like a John Knox of his time. Really, I wouldn't go that far to say that. And because of the things that he had defended during his time, that were of a huge importance. Arius's doctrine was something that seemed innocuous, but actually had like far-reaching like implications and potentially uh, offer a little poison in the mix of it. So he says honey mixed with poison. Interesting picture. So it's like something that seems seemingly positive, life-giving, uh, that disguises really something that is detrimental. So that could come off as arrogant, but holding doggedly to what we believe to be true can make us seem like we lack gentleness. Yet the author feels that we should not waver from the truth, although we must preserve the fundamental truths of the gospel with gentleness and kindness, yet also with firm convictions. And that's something that definitely requires tons of the fruit of the spirit, but at the same time, amidst that love, a lot of wisdom, discretion, and a lot of discernment as well as to how to navigate such matters.